They said Earth was late to the stars. Primitive, behind. A curiosity among interstellar empires that waged wars with particle disruptors and fought across gravity-bent battlefields. To the Galactic Coalition, humanity was an antique species, admitted into fold more for diplomatic balance than military necessity. Still, when the Coalition faced growing losses against a Varnak swarm, Earth was called upon, if only to show symbolic unity. Sergeant Isaac Voss stepped off the shuttle onto the dust-blasted surface of Dagon 4, his boots crunching on orange gravel still warm from orbital bombardment. He was tall, lean, wrapped in matte desert camo that clashed with the shimmering alloy of alien exosuits around him. Slung across his back was a long black rifle with visible mechanical levers and a bolt-action system that looked like it belonged in a museum. It drew stares and laughter. That thing shoots slugs or nostalgia? One of the alien officers quipped, his transliterator rendering the mockery in a smooth, synthetic accent. Voss didn't respond. He didn't need to. The humans behind him, 6 soldiers, all with various loadouts of kinetic weapons and analog gear, wore the same blank expressions. Earth's best, Ghost Division, specialists in outdated warfare. The briefing was held in a mobile command hub, a half-buried dome blinking with holographic maps and data feeds. The Coalition commander, an 8-limbed creature from the Zeltari species, stood at the center, surrounded by alien tacticians. The Varnak have infested the mining colony beneath Ridge 7, it said, mandibles clicking softly between words. Standard plasma units have failed to breach their outer shell. EM pulse grenades proved ineffective. We suspect biological adaptation. One of the humans raised an eyebrow. You mean they've grown immune to your weapons? The Zeltari paused. Adapted, yes. Their hive organism processes battle intel in real time. Plasma burns are now dispersed across their dermal mesh. Your projectile weapons will be of limited value. Then why call us in? Voss asked, voice low and steady. Because you humans possess something unexpected. And frankly, desperate times demand risk. You've been assigned to support Sector 4's push tomorrow at 05. The human team dispersed quietly afterward. Coalition soldiers watched them go, murmuring through neural links. Primitive, reckless, relics of a less evolved species. Later, as twilight dimmed Dagon's sky into violet dusk, Voss knelt on the edge of a cliff overlooking the arid valley, where Ridge 7 slouched in the distance. Through a compact scope, he mapped terrain folds and thermal layers with a pencil on paper. No drone swarms, no digital overlays. Just wind readings, dust velocity, and time of flight. You always do this? Asked a voice behind him. Voss glanced back. It was Lieutenant Sarek, a Sithri tactician encased in gleaming armor and bearing a plasma lance across his back. Do what? Voss replied. Pretend your instincts are more accurate than our sensors. Your sensors failed. I'm planning to succeed. Sarek's eyes flickered, a subtle biological blink of offense. I reviewed your Earth tactics. Your wars involve days of hiding, hours of waiting, and reliance on projectiles that require gravitational compensation. You truly believe it will matter against enemies who evolve every time they're wounded? Voss stood, stretching his legs. You ever watch the Predator stop breathing for 3 minutes to take a shot that matters? Sarek didn't answer. The night before deployment was quiet. The human squad checked and rechecked gear. No one spoke much. Every bullet was hand-loaded. Cases lined in velvet within their packs. Analog radios clicked softly, untraceable by the Varnak. They carried no active emissions, no heat signatures, only patience. At dawn, the Coalition forces surged forward in gleaming formations, bolstered by AI-controlled artillery and drones that hummed in vertical stacks above them. Voss and his team didn't follow. They remained behind, scaling a dry ridge that curved west of the colony. From there, he unfolded his bipod and settled behind the scope, his eye narrowing to a dot of clarity. Below, the first screams began. The Varnak swarmed out of the rock like an oil spill, sleek bodies coated in armored chitin that shimmered with refracted light. Plasma fire lit up the battlefield, but the bugs didn't fall. The shots glanced off. Some were absorbed. Coalition lines broke. Units fell back in confusion. Sarek's voice echoed over the channel. Strained. Requesting fire support. Sector 4 is compromised. Repeat, Sector 4. Voss didn't wait. He adjusted the dial on his scope, checked wind with a flutter cloth tied to barrel, and exhaled. One shot cracked through the valley. It punched through the head of a Varnak lieutenant mid-charge, splattering dark fluid over the beast behind it. They recoiled, surprised. 2 more shots followed, shattering thoraxes, breaking leg joints, cracking shells. Then silence, an unnatural pause in the chaos as Varnak forces hesitated, unsure what had just happened. Up in the rocks, Voss slid another round into the chamber. On the comm, Sarek's voice returned, quieter this time. Was that you? Voss didn't reply. The rifle answered for him. The aftermath of the first volley was a ripple in time. Brief, disorienting, but impossible to ignore. Coalition troops stared across the battlefield where plasma had failed and one man, one gun, had altered the rhythm of combat. For a fleeting moment, the Varnak hesitated. They were creatures bred for relentless forward motion, unbothered by attrition. But death delivered in silence, from unseen angles and with unfamiliar precision, that disturbed them. Sergeant Isaac Voss chambered another round, his hands moving with the certainty of muscle memory. Below, fire teams regrouped, galvanized by the opening he'd carved. Lieutenant Sarek's voice returned on the comms, less clipped now, laced with something bordering on respect. Human, you open a breach along the ridge flank. We're pushing. Voss didn't answer. He adjusted his scope, mapped the swarm's shifting vectors, and picked out the next target. A larger Varnak, with ridged armor and a cluster of twitching sensory nodules on its back. Likely a command node. He waited, timing the creature's rhythmic gait, then fired. The bullet struck just beneath the plate, where armor met flesh. The Varnak's body spasmed, collapsed, and thrashed like a puppet with its strings cut. The creatures around it scattered again, reorganizing, confused. Another moment of disruption. Another chance. The Ghost Division had long since separated from the main force. While the Coalition advanced with thunder and fire, Voss and his team ghosted through terrain like whispers. Sergeant Renna took high ground south of the colony ruins, spotting and marking targets with old-fashioned laser optics. Corporal Idris laid claymores in natural choke points. No drones, no AI, just footfalls, breath control, and precision. We've got heat bloom. Renna's voice crackled through analog static. 200 meters below the refinery shell. Something big. Voss shifted, swept the scope, and found it. An armored creature twice the size of the others, dragging a swollen carapace with what looked like vents or hatches blooming along its spine. It's a birthing drone, he said quietly. They're reinforcing in real time. How many? Too many. Across the valley, alien platoons were faltering again. The Varnak had found rhythm. Their adaptability was on full display. The outer carapaces of newer units shimmered differently, refracting plasma into harmless arcs. The Sithri weapons whined uselessly as beams skated off their targets. For every alien fallen, 2 Varnak emerged from the drone's venting body. They're learning, Sarek hissed over comms. Our targeting software isn't recalibrating fast enough. We're losing entire fire teams. Voss didn't hesitate. Send coordinates. I'll handle it. You can't. The armor's too thick. Not even our artillery cracked them. I'm not your artillery. He adjusted elevation, windage, and loaded a round marked with red band. Tungsten core anti-material, designed for armor piercing at long range. It wasn't smart. It wasn't guided. It was brute force disguised as precision. Time slowed. He steadied his heartbeat, counted the breaths between gusts of wind, watched the thermal shimmer above the colony's skeletal framework. The drone had turned, exposing a momentary seam at the base of its hatch. That was the shot. He fired. The rifle kicked against his shoulder like a living thing. The round soared, cutting through 2 layers of metal, and buried itself in the soft underplate. A second later, the drone erupted in a spray of green fluid and twitching limbs. The stream of Varnak reinforcements stopped. Coalition channels went silent for a beat, then erupted. Cheers. Disbelief. Some didn't understand what had happened. only that something impossible had been done. He killed it, Rena whispered. That shot wasn't even on a flat vector. He threaded it through crosswind and debris. Sarek's voice returned, measured but no longer condescending. What system does your weapon use? Some kind of kinetic smart round. No system, Voss replied. Just math, gravity, and patience. The battlefield shifted after that. Coalition troops began syncing with Ghost Division's analog readings. They turned off their sensors, started using manual sight lines and acoustic triangulation. Voss became an anchor, calling positions, reading terrain, predicting swarm flows based on heat dispersion and shadow movement. What began as curiosity from the aliens turned to reliance, and then something deeper. Human, Sarek said on a private channel, you must teach us this form of warfare. These non-digital tactics. You read the field as if the dust speaks to you. It does, Voss said, if you stop drowning in your own signals and listen. Night began to fall again, casting long shadows across the valley. Fire smoldered where the refinery once stood. The swarm had retreated deeper underground for now, severed from a node they didn't know how to replace. But it was only a lull. The Varnak would return. They always returned. Voss lay on the ridge, watching the horizon through his scope. He felt the weight of expectations settling in, thousands of lives leaning on an old rifle, and a man who never trusted machines to think for him. He didn't flinch. He didn't smile. He just waited. The next morning arrived without light. Dagon's sun remained hidden behind a churning dust storm that turned the sky a dull, oppressive gray. The wind howled across the fractured valley, dragging particulate grit over armor, optics, and rifle barrels. It was a battlefield smothered in silence and static, difficult for drones, fatal for satellites. But for Isaac Voss, it was familiar. Ghost Division crouched beneath a half-collapsed scaffold near the outer rim of the ridge, their analog scopes fogged but still functional. No words passed between them. They all knew what the shifting wind meant. Something was coming. Lieutenant Sarek transmitted on a tight beam channel, distorted by the storm but intelligible. Varnak activity detected in the submines. We believe they're preparing another surge. This time, we've identified a class we have not seen before. Voss lifted his scope, swept across the wasteland in careful, deliberate arcs. Through the storm's veil, movement stirred. A lumbering mass too large to be infantry, too slow to be a swarm. When it emerged from the ruined refinery, the ground trembled, even through the layers of debris and heat distortion. Its scale was undeniable. It was a hive beast. The Coalition had rumors, fragmented reports from glass moons and failed outposts, but no confirmed footage. Until now, the creature stood 3 stories tall, a grotesque hybrid of biological muscle and obsidian armor. Its legs resembled tree trunks coated in razor thorns. Its back bristled with living turrets that seemed to breathe and blink. Along its thorax, massive vents expelled gusts of spore-laced steam. Command want to retreat, Sarek said. They're rerouting dropships for emergency extraction. It's not just the armor we can't lock on. It bends energy signatures. Voss exhaled through his nose. Then don't use energy. You think a kinetic shot will pierce that thing? No, he said, lifting the rifle from his cradle and resting it across his knees. I think the right shot will. There was no bravado in his voice, no swagger, just certainty. He opened a weather-worn case and selected a single round. It was hand-loaded back on Earth, a uranium-core sabot with precision-cut jacket, forged for mass and velocity, not elegance. Voss slid it into the chamber with the reverence of a monk loading scripture into a sacred press. I'll need elevation, he said to his team. High enough to arc the shot. 5 miles, maybe 6. There's a stone rise northeast past the second trench. Renan nodded. That area has been crawling with scouts. Won't matter. They'll be dead before they report back. He set off alone, the rifle strapped across his back, the storm pushing against him like a living thing. It took 23 minutes to reach the rise, climbing through fractured stone and loose gravel. There were moments when the wind nearly took him down, but he pressed on, every movement practiced and quiet. At the summit, he unfolded the tripod, adjusted the legs, and lay prone. The beast loomed in the valley below, moving slowly toward a command outpost where the last of the Coalition personnel scrambled to evacuate. Voss checked the scope. Too much distortion. He switched to a secondary lens. Thermal adaptive. Filter for particle dispersion. The air shimmered with heat streams, wind vortexes, and thermal layering from the burning refinery ruins. Nothing about the shot was stable. He smiled. For a moment, the world narrowed. He adjusted for elevation, barometric shift, wind shear, and gravitational decay over distance. His fingers danced across the rifle's dials without looking. Behind him, no squad, no drones, no AI. Just breath, just time, just one bullet. He found the mark just beneath the third breathing vent, where the plating overlapped. An error in symmetry. A manufacturing flaw in a creature that wasn't supposed to be manufactured. That was the target. He inhaled, slow and deep. He held it and fired. The round departed without sound, swallowed by the wind. It curved gently through the storm, arcing over stone pillars and burned metal, slipping between gusts as if the storm itself parted to let it pass. It took 7 seconds to reach its target. The impact was instant and total. The hive beast stopped. A sharp, violent tremor rippled through its limbs. Then it crumpled forward, collapsing in a heap of twitching limbs and ruptured organs. The vent cavity hissed violently before a backdraft ignited something deep inside, blooming into a blue-white flame that consumed half its upper frame. The Varnak paused, every one of them. Across the valley, they shuddered, linked by hive consciousness that now screamed in confusion. The air was suddenly filled with their cries, high and mournful, like the howl of broken instruments. They began to retreat, slowly at first, then chaotically. Without the hive beast, their collective was fragmented, scattered, vulnerable. Coalition comms lit up with disbelief. "You killed it," someone shouted. "From where?" "I didn't even see the flash. What weapon is that?" Voss didn't respond. He watched the crater where the creature had fallen, eyes steady, scope still fixed on a fading glow. His finger rested off the trigger. One bullet, one shot. That was all it ever needed to be. Back at the base, Sarek stood among stunned officers, his gaze directed toward the high ridge where the shot had come. In his hand, a data slate recorded trajectory, the wind models, and the ballistics, but it couldn't explain what made it possible. No algorithm could simulate instinct. He tapped the comm. "Sergeant Voss, are you still operational?" "Still breathing," came the calm reply. There was silence, then a voice soft, unsure. "What do we do now?" Voss looked down the valley, at the scattering swarm and the burning husk of what had once seemed invincible. "Now," he said, "we finish this." The ash from the hive beast's corpse hadn't yet settled when the final order came through. Full counteroffensive, all fronts. No waiting for reinforcements. No more retreats. With the death of the central node, the Varnak hive mind was scattered. Fragmented consciousnesses now operating on panic, instinct, and aggression without unity. The perfect time to strike. From the high ridge, Isaac Voss rose slowly, his knees creaking beneath him. The rifle was still warm against his hands, but the moment of reverence had passed. Now came the work. He packed his gear with methodical care, eyes sweeping the battlefield below where alien fire teams regrouped with cautious optimism. Coalition units surged forward, led not by AI commands but by humans, Ghost of Vision taking point through the debris-ridden field. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Earth's primitive soldiers now dictated the tempo of an interstellar war. Even Sarek, flanked by 2 elite Sithri guards, followed the movements of Voss and his team without issuing counterorders. "Your people," Sarek said quietly as he approached the advancing line, "have shifted the balance of this war. We were not prepared for that." Voss adjusted the sling across his chest and gave the alien officer a sidelong glance. "That's because you measure war in data. We measure it in finality." The Coalition forces swept into the subterranean mine complex beneath the refinery ruins. It was a labyrinth of tunnels bored into Dayon IV's crust, winding in geometric spirals and punctuated by organic growths. The Varnak had seeded their expansion chambers here. This was their last hive on the planet. Voss could feel it. The dust was heavier, the silence deeper. Inside the mine, the temperature dropped. Condensation glistened on tunnel walls and faint bioluminescence pulsed in rhythmic patterns, like a living heartbeat stretched across stone. Every turn, every narrowing path, threatened ambush. But the Varnak no longer fought in unison. They came in wild, disorganized bursts, clattering along the walls and ceilings, their movements desperate. And each time they were met with cold precision. Ren of fire from the rear, her analog optics cutting through the darkness. Idris used sound traps and tactile sensors to detect crawling movement in the blind zones. Voss picked off Varnak leaders with surgical control, each shot echoing like a gavel. Sarek observed, silent at first. Then, gradually, he began giving orders not through code or algorithm, but based on what he saw. His troops moved with less reliance on HUDs, instead watching their surroundings, learning from the humans, mimicking their stillness and economy of action. "You said war is measured in finality," Sarek murmured, walking beside Voss in a narrow tunnel. "Explain that." Voss didn't look at him. "It means we don't fire to suppress. We fire to end something. Every bullet has a purpose. Every risk a line we don't cross twice." They reached the nest chamber just before the hour turned. It sprawled beneath a natural fault line, webbed with pulsing green sacs and clusters of eggs emitting low, chittering vibrations. It stank of birth and rot, of something alive clinging to the edge of annihilation. In the center sat the last surviving matriarch, a towering, bloated creature with dozens of eyes and swollen limbs. She didn't charge. She didn't scream. She simply stared at them, waiting, a monarch at the end of her reign. Sarek lifted his plasma lance but hesitated. Voss stepped forward. "This one doesn't die with fire," he said. "She's watching, studying. She wants to remember. Why would she care?" "She's beaten," Sarek said. "No," Voss said, raising his rifle slowly, sighting through the glass one last time. "She's learning what can kill her." He fired. The shot punched clean through the matriarch's central eye cluster. No explosion, no scream, just silence as the creature slumped, the life bleeding out of her into the wet stone beneath. In the minutes that followed, the pulsing sacs began to deflate. The walls lost their glow. Something vital disconnected. Across the battlefield above, Varnak forces dropped where they stood, neurally severed, like limbs removed from the body of a dying god. By the time Voss emerged from the mines, the sun had broken through the storm, casting beams of harsh light across the ruined terrain. Coalition banners were raised. Survivors stood, bloodied and silent, facing the ridge where the final shot had been taken. Later, in the command dome, Sarek addressed the assembly. Representatives from 4 species stood before him. The war on Dayon 4 was over, and the unexpected had become truth. "Sergeant Voss," Sarek said, his voice carrying over the assembled, "you have redefined what we believed warfare to be. Not with numbers, not with machines, but with will." Voss stood at the rear, arms crossed, rifle slung casually over his shoulder. "Primitive," Sarek continued, "was our word for you. We now understand it meant something different, something we forgot." Voss didn't answer. He didn't need to. That night, as stars reclaimed the sky above Dayon 4 and the battlefield was clean of its final traces, Ghost Division prepared to leave. Their gear was packed, their bullets counted, their methods unchanged. War would come again, somewhere, to someone, and when it did, the Coalition would remember this place. The shot that silenced an army. The man who didn't trust technology, but understood violence like a language. In the end, the galaxy didn't fear Earth's machines. It feared its patience.